Welcome back to the TD show on this polar vortex morning. We're all set to battle the elements here in Edmonton, Kentucky to bring you another show. We're going to start off the way we have for a while now, talk a little NFL. We'll touch on last weekend's AFC and NFC championship games, lead you straight into the Super Bowl, whenever that may be. We'll talk Welker, Belichick, Sherman, cross over to the MLB and talk Tanaka and the Yankees, who once again have already found themselves over the salary cap, paying the luxury tax. In hour two, we'll be joined by Hornets coach David Clemens to recap Class A, discuss the effects of the game moving forward this season. Daniel's going to take you outdoors today for a little turkey talk. Might need a jacket for that one. It's coming down pretty good out there right now. We'll touch on the Winter Olympics, all the while trying to get in a couple fan phone calls this morning along the way. I'll give you my weekly guarantee. Daniel will provide you with a little what to watch. And don't forget about Paula Dan coming up in the second hour of the show.
Don't forget, you can still reach us on Facebook at facebook.com/TheTDShow. Our Twitter handle is still @TheTDShow. You can email the show at mail@TheTDShow or tdshow@outlook.com. That'll be up for a couple more weeks. Of course, you can listen to us at Spreaker.com/user/TheTDShow. And after today's show airs, you should be able to watch all the videos live at youtube.com/user/MedcalfTDShow. And starting today, something pretty exciting. You can listen to us live at thetdshow.com. Brand new website. Hopefully next week you'll be able to watch a video live there, but you can definitely hear us live right now at thetdshow.com. So if you haven't heard that yet, get on over there. Check it out. It's pretty cool. It's going to be better. It's still under a little bit of construction right now. But you can learn quite a bit more about us there. There's a Meet the Host page, a contact page where you can see all our email and Twitter. You can also get on our message board, and we have a discussion board up. And we have our poll question there that you can vote on. And every episode that we've done so far is going to be on there in our podcast section, so you can go back and see your favorites or catch up if you missed any of it, or if you want to laugh at some of the stuff we've said, or see how wrong we've been on some of our picks. You can go back and do that there. Like I said, our poll question is there too. So speaking of that, here's what our question is today. All things being equal, would you rather have Denver's offense or Seattle's defense in the Super Bowl? Which one do you think will reign supreme whenever they decide to play this sucker? So everybody be sure to vote on that this morning. And speaking of the Super Bowl, let's talk about how the Denver Broncos and the Seattle Seahawks got there with last week's AFC and NFC championship games.
Yeah, we'll start with the Denver New England game last weekend. Denver beating New England 26-16. And you know, something I'd said about every week now is that for 6 out of the last 8 years, there's been a wild card win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, not going to happen.
It's not going to happen this year.
No, I don't. I wish I'd looked it up. I meant to. How many times the two number ones coming in? They're going to play.
Yeah.
I don't think it happens very often, but I didn't look it up.
And really, the two teams that everybody picked at the beginning of the season too.
Yeah.
The majority of people. But the Denver-New England game, you just kind of felt like Denver had a hold on it most of the game.
Yeah, the score, it came up being a little closer than it actually felt like when you were watching it.
I mean, for all the talk of how Peyton Manning, once again, not any good in the playoffs.
Not any good in the playoffs, that's right.
Wait, speaking of this, ding, ding, ding here, weekly guarantee 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
Peyton Manning beats San Diego, then New England comes in, beats them too. So, hey, put a notch up there for the weekly guarantee.
Yeah, let's break down a little bit of the stats of what happened in the Broncos game, the Broncos-Patriots game. Manning had a pretty good game passing. Passed for 400 yards. Only Peyton Manning would call that a pretty good game. Most other people would be pretty excited. He was 23 for 43, 400 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Broncos continued to run the ball very well. Ran it 28 times, 107 yards. Marino saw the bulk of the carries, had 14 rushes for 59 yards. Also, Virgil Green came in, who is a receiver, came in at tailback, ran the ball to the middle, got 7 yards once.
Snuck in there on us.
Demarius Thomas was the leading receiver, had 7 receptions, 134 yards, and a touchdown. The other touchdown came when Jacob Tammy caught one for about 10 yards, scored a touchdown. He had 2 receptions for 24 yards total. Prater was 4 for 4, had a 54-yard game long, and they had a 507 yards total offense. Going to be hard for anybody to beat anybody with 507 yards.
You know, one of the amazing things about that is nowadays when a kicker lines up for a 54-yard field goal, it's almost assumed he's going to make it. And for 54 yards, nobody's like, well, this is a little risky. It's just like, he's probably going to make it.
Well, I mean, he does have the longest field goal in history, and he is playing at Mile High where the record's been set twice.
True.
So he's got a good shot at it there. On the flip side, Patriots are 24 for 38 passing. Tom Brady had 277 yards, 1 TD, no interceptions. They ran it 16 times for 63 yards. Tom Brady actually ran it for their only rushing TD. That has 320 yards total offense. What impressed me in this game was something that I think will translate pretty well next week, and that's the Broncos' front seven. They effectively stopped the Patriots' rushing game. Last week, 2 weeks ago now, Blunt himself ran for 168 yards and 4 touchdowns. He only had 6 yards against the Broncos. And that's with some players out on the front line, but the linebacker core stepped up great. I thought that the defense played very well. Where the Broncos have always struggled a little bit has been in their secondary coverage. But I thought Champ Bailey filled in very nicely. He handled Amendola pretty well in that slot area where we knew he would have to come up and be challenged, and there wasn't really much challenge for the defense.
Yeah, the two things we talked about last week was if the Patriots could run the ball, then it'd be a close game, and they couldn't. And if they could somehow keep Manning from throwing the ball, it'd be a close game, and they couldn't. And partially because Akeem Talib goes out and Peyton Manning's eyes light up, and he hits Demaryius Thomas for 7 receptions, 134 yards.
That's right. Another key that's always going to be a key to beating the Broncos is keeping Peyton Manning off the field. When he's controlling the offense, the game is at his mercy. They had 2 drives in the second half of over 7 minutes, and they had 36 minutes of possession. That was 10 more minutes than the Patriots had. Their defense just couldn't get him off the field, and that's eventually what cost them.
Yeah, and something else that was a lot different than this game than when they met in week 15, I believe it was. Whenever they met.
15.
The Broncos had a lot of success in the first half, but all that success was running the ball, and they really never got in the pattern of throwing the ball and got the connection there. But you saw right out of the gate, I think it was 7 completions to start the game for Manning. So got in a groove early there and was just able to carry it out through the whole game. But I mentioned Akeem Talib going out and Thomas being able to make all those receptions. We saw the day after the game, Belichick come out in the press conference and talk about the hit on Welker. Do you have the quote there on what he said?
Yeah, it was a longer. I cut out the part we're just talking about Welker. Belichick said Wes Welker made a deliberate play to take out Talib. A few other words, and in one of the worst I've ever seen. The NFL should punish Welker. I'll leave that up to them.
Yeah, it's just, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, it was a legal hit in the zone, and it's a screenplay. Something that Belichick himself runs more than anybody else in the NFL.
They ran multiple times during that game.
Right. That's kind of where he makes his money. That's where he taught Wes Welker how to run this play. They run that cross across the middle. They're doing it now with Danny Amendola across the middle. Well, they're not doing it now. They did it last week. But that's something that they do better than anybody, and they got beat at it. And Wes Welker, Bill Belichick normally doesn't say anything, and to see him come out and say something as unclassy as this, I did not like it at all.
And I completely agree. It was a legal hit. There was nothing wrong with it. Welker shouldn't be fined. It shouldn't have even really been brought up. It wasn't deliberate at all. Nobody thinks besides, and I don't think Belichick even thinks that he deliberately, first of all, who would think that Welker would be able to hurt Talib on that play?
It would seem like especially intentionally.
Yeah, it would be the other way around considering Wes Welker's been out for 4 weeks
with concussion.
Right.
And he's about, 60% of Akeem Talib's body weight.
But I do believe in this new NFL, with all the concussion and the injury protocols, that this happening on this big of a stage could make a play like that illegal next year when they go in and look at things like this.
Well, your odds of getting a concussion on that play in the way that it's run, and if it's run correctly, are pretty low. It's always going to be a shoulder to middle of the body hit, or a just flat on body to body hit. There's not going to be much head-to-head contact, but there is always, just as there is going to be on any open field play, the opportunity to break a leg or tear a hip joint out or tear an ACL. But that's football. That's part of the game.
Not in this NFL. Not anymore. I mean, it's almost two-hand touch football that we're getting to. And if there's any kind of exact play that they can narrow down where an injury might happen and zero in on a particular instance like that,
right.
I'm just saying that it's possible that we could see that.
I will say that if it comes to that, it's going to hurt Bill Belichick more than it hurts
anybody else. He hurt himself overall. But the later game, the primetime game of last weekend, Seattle 23-17 over San Francisco. And, I mean, that game was everything that it was supposed to be.
Yep, great game.
From the first possession, when you get the strip sack, to towards the end of the game when Bowman gives up a knee to recover a fumble that he doesn't even get.
Yeah, that's something we're going to talk about as we move on. But throughout the whole game, it started and ended exactly how you wanted it. Ended with some controversy, but with a great play at the goal line to save the game. But also started exactly how we thought. Two defensive battles, two in-your-face rushing attacks. Great game. Like I said before the game, when I took Russell Wilson, it was going to come down to who could pass the ball a little better, and that was Russell Wilson. He threw the ball he was 16 for 25, 215 yards, and a touchdown, 0 interceptions. Colin Kaepernick was 14 for 24, 153 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. So like I said, all things being equal, both very good defenses, very good rushing attacks. Who do you want to have the ball in their hand to win the game? Kaepernick had the ball in his hand, had a decent shot at it, ended up getting an interception. Kind of what I was scared of, kind of what I was afraid of coming into the game, and why I said I would trust Russell Wilson with the game.
It was, like I said, this game, these two teams, the reason that their quarterbacks are presumably so good is because the teams don't ask them to do very much.
Right.
With their running backs and their defense, there's not a lot of weight on the quarterback's shoulders, but we saw when there was that maybe Kaepernick's not the quarterback that we thought he might be.
Well, here's a stat that's gonna maybe explain this a little to you. Colin Kaepernick was sacked twice, had 2 interceptions. Russell Wilson wasn't sacked, but when it came crunch time and they had to scramble and get rid of the ball, Russell Wilson threw it. When Kaepernick was pressured, he ran. He did run well. He ran for 130 yards, which was most of their yards. They ran it 28 times total for 160 yards. 11 of those were Kaepernick for 130 yards, and 3 of those were designed rushing plays. The other 8 were him getting out, avoiding it, and running, which is fine. 160 yards isn't going to win a ball game for you. You're going to need to get 450 yards total offense to win a championship level game.
Yeah, and the biggest thing we just touched on about this game that I think if you're the NFL you have to take from this game is every play has to be reviewable by somebody there.
Right.
Signaling down to the umpires, the refs, hey, you got to come look at this because y'all just missed that.
Yeah, if you're going to have replay, and we do, and the NFL executes replay better than any other sport.
Right.
I mean, they do. But if you're going to have it, you ought to be able to have it in game-changing situations. I don't know what the exact rule is. If you set up if you set up a red zone rule where any play in the red zone gets reviewed automatically upstairs, clearly a fumble, easy to see, should have been able to see it on the field. Cost somebody his leg, cost somebody maybe their career. Now, he's a tough dude, and we think he'll be back, but you never know when you tear an ACL in the NFL, especially when you're a big guy playing a middle position like that. You could be done.
Yeah, if the guy's going to give up his leg, you got to give him the play.
Exactly.
And, I mean, the ball don't lie. We saw what happened the next play.
And it ended up working better for San Francisco.
Yeah.
Now, this is something that I'm about to say might be a little controversial, but it's something that's going to apply to the Super Bowl. At home, San Francisco gets so many calls. And normally I try to keep this out of it, but you think about how loud it is and how rowdy those fans are. Those refs are human. They know what's going to happen when they make a call against San Francisco. Are they going to get those calls in the Meadowlands? Is that going to happen? I don't think they're going to be able to play.
Seattle.
Yeah, Seattle. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Seattle going to get those calls in the Meadowlands? I don't think you're going to be able to mug people outside.
So, are you talking about? Now, I can see this. the D-backs not getting any interference calls.
They got no interference calls, and if there was a big play, a fumble, maybe something, it just seemed like a lot more breaks went Seattle's way at home.
The defense, the way they call defensive interference will make a huge difference in the Super Bowl.
I agree.
I mean, and the weather and the refs will pretty much decide who wins because the teams are so even matched that the weather and the refs.
Well, their strengths match up against strengths. The Broncos have an awesome passing attack, and Seattle has an awesome deep back core. Broncos have a decent rushing attack. They have a decent front seven, and that's what's going to match up very well. I don't know. I honestly believe that Peyton is going to send everybody running right at the first time they see man coverage and test the waters. He's going to try and get a passing interference his first play, see what's going to happen, see how bad they get mugged, and then he'll adjust. Now you can always run those short routes for 6 yards, but we're not going to see much downfield action if they call it the way that they call it in Seattle, where you're allowed to hold on and mug each other on the outside.
I was, during the production meeting, we were kind of talking about holding off Super Bowl predictions for next week, but then you realize
we might miss
the Super Bowl might be before we're back again. And so, for those who haven't heard, there's a Super Bowl contingency plan, and you know a little bit more about it. So just tell them basically what might happen.
We've got a contingency plan if for whatever reason the NFL deems that there is, as there is right now, a big what they call a polar vortex moving in, and there's going to be a bad storm on Sunday, maybe with ground flight cause problems. They might move the game up to Friday. I mean, that's a possibility. We could see a Super Bowl on Friday night. I don't think it's going to happen because there's too much money invested. If we get past Friday and things are looking okay, and then it hits, we have the option of moving the game till Sunday. Now, this is not something I'm making up, not something I just heard. This is from Roger Goodell's office. This is legit. I don't think it's going to happen. I think they're going to do whatever they can to get that game played on Sunday, but that just begs the question, why put yourself in a situation where this might happen? The biggest, most highly rated television event in history. This will be the most highly rated television event in history, guaranteed. Write that down. But it might not happen. It might get moved to a different day. With all that money, I think it's almost $4 million for a 30-second ad. Every commercial guaranteed on that day. It is $3,850 is the average price of a ticket to get into the game. That's an average seat. That's not a lower level seat. You think about what rooms you're going to be. No one is going to the Super Bowl for under $10,000, and you're going to risk it just because you want to play in a cold weather stadium.
You're right. I mean, with all the money, and it's presumed that this will be the most watched Super Bowl of all time, which will make it the most watched event of all time. Mm-hmm. I can't imagine them changing the day and the time. It would blow my mind. And like you say, it blows my mind that you put it where this could happen. I mean, I think it's a good idea to have it in New York if there's a stadium with a dome, because New York's a nice place to have things.
Right. I mean, it can
or in the summer, if the Super Bowl is during the summer, it'd be a great idea to have it in New York.
New York has the infrastructure to handle the people. And the outlying Jersey City or so, wherever we're at, has the infrastructure to hold the people there. And there's stuff for people to do. There's plenty of rooms. There's plenty of transportation, but there's not a facility to facilitate the game of this magnitude where you want to see the absolute best that each team has to offer. You don't want to worry about anything other than who's going to win that game.
Right, and you touched on something else there. The Super Bowl, and the reason it's so big and touches people outside the normal fan base is because there's so much more going on. There's Super Bowl week activities all week. Mm-hmm. And can you imagine how miserable it's going to be during all these activities? Yeah,
especially for people like us who love sports, eat it up. The week itself leading up to the Super Bowl is as big or bigger than the game. I mean, well, not for me because I've been a Broncos fan my entire life, but most Super Bowls, just seeing what's going on, all the backstories and everything is just as big as the game, and that's all going to be put hampered on by the weather.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the argument for wanting every team to have a Super Bowl at some point, but I don't think it's feasible.
Not at all.
You can't have it up north in a non-domed stadium, an open stadium, during this time. I mean, we'll get to our predictions here. It can make all the world of difference in a game. If it's, no matter the temperature, whether it's 10 degrees or 60 degrees, if there's no precipitation and there's no wind, I think Denver could run away with the game.
Yep.
No matter the temperature, whether it's 4 or 60 degrees, and there's 30-mile-per-hour winds, and it's snowing or raining or sleeting or whatever, I think Seattle could run away with the game. That's how much of a difference I think it makes.
Yeah. If you look back at the history, the coldest Super Bowl ever was 39 degrees. That was Super Bowl VI. This wasn't by design. It was played in New Orleans, Louisiana. This was back before the Superdome, and it just got cold. Cold snap moved in there and got down to 39. Coldest had been there in a long time. That wasn't by design. There's no way we're going to be over 39. We're going to be the coldest Super Bowl on record. Average Super Bowl temperature is 67 degrees. Of course, that's taking into account indoor and outdoor stadiums. Average temperature is 67 degrees. We're going to be well under half that. Right now, the high for that day is projected to be 35. It's not going to be the high when they're playing Super Bowl. We're going to be in the lower range. We're probably going to be around 30, 28 degrees. It doesn't make any sense for the fans, for the media, for anything like this to happen. It's not like that bowls, dome stadiums are a new thing. They've been around a long time. We've been using them for Super Bowls for 40 years now. I don't have a problem with them saying, look, if you want to have a Super Bowl, you get a retractable roof or a dome, and we'll play it in there. It just makes so much more sense for all the other activities that go on. Think about the halftime show. I heard they might have to move the halftime show to Madison Square Gardens or somewhere.
And the thing about this is, you can enjoy a football game like Philadelphia and Detroit had this year.
Right.
In the regular season, you just don't want that to be the stage for the Super Bowl where weather might play an effect on the winner of the biggest game all year.
Right. And what did we talk about after the Philadelphia-Detroit game? We talked about the snow. We talked about the ref coming out and asking for someone to clear the goal line.
Yeah.
I don't
can't see the goal line.
I don't remember the game. I remember that. And I don't want that for my Super Bowl, especially me. I want to give you a little history. First Super Bowl that I ever really watched start to finish and really got into was 1997. Green Bay Packers won a Super Bowl that year. The next year, I stayed up with my dad, and I watched, in 1998, the Broncos and the Packers play. I rooted for the Broncos simply because the Packers had won the year before, and I wanted someone else to win it. That being said, I'd also heard from my dad how many times that John Elway had been there and not won one. This was his 5th Super Bowl. He'd never won one. I rooted for him. They won that Super Bowl. Terrell Davis was the player of the game, and I was a Broncos fan for life. I was hooked. I've been a Broncos fan every day of my life since then because of the Super Bowl. That's the effect that the Super Bowl has on people. It's sort of a life-changing event, at least in the sports world for me. I watched that one. I watched in '99. I never even played football at this point. I was 9 years old when I watched. I was 8 years old when I watched that first Super Bowl. And it changed my life. I want to play football. I played football the rest of my life, and until they told me you can't play football anymore. That changed my life. And we're going to risk that to give New York a shot at having a game, something that really affects people beyond the sports world. I didn't know anything about football. Didn't know the rules. Didn't know the first thing until I watched that game. And then in 1999, I watched John Elway crawl across the goal line to win the game and then get named the MVP. I was hooked. That was it. It took Super Bowls to get me interested. And they're going to give that up. They're going to risk the tradition and the honor and the prestige that goes along with that for this thing. There's just some places that aren't suited for events of this magnitude, which is something I want to touch on later when we get to the Olympics. And I think that's a perfect example.
Well, speaking of your Denver Broncos, they're a 3-point favorite.
Which this is weird. I know you're the line guy, but they opened up at an underdog.
Yeah, I think it was a 3-point underdog. But
2.5 points, I think, underdog.
Yeah, but then within like an hour, the money came in and it switched. The total on the game is 47 over under. I'm gonna go Denver 31, Seattle 20. I think Peyton's gonna be able to pick them apart, and I think they talk about quarterbacks getting frustrated. I think we'll see that great secondary for the Seahawks get frustrated because of how good the Denver offense is.
Here's what's going to happen. Peyton Manning's a pretty smart dude. He knows how good their secondary is. He knows how good Richard Sherman is, someone we're going to talk about later. He knows he's got 8 picks this year. He's not going to throw at him. And Richard Sherman is going to play beyond himself trying to make plays because he's not going to have the opportunity. He's going to mess up. He's human. Denver's going to capitalize. I didn't want to give a prediction yet. I'm going to go Denver 36, Seattle 28.
High scoring game.
Yeah, you're not going to beat him. You're not going to beat him. Just like you didn't beat John Elway 97-98. Knew it was the end. 98-99. Knew it was the end. Wanted to go out on top. Peyton Manning's going to go out on top. Also, going to be wearing orange jerseys. 1999, John Elway crawled across that goal line in an orange jersey. So, a little good luck there.
0-3 in the jerseys, though, right? 0-3, 0-4, something like that. But when you got Peyton Manning, it don't matter what color you wear.
No, he was also 0-3 in his last 3 playoff games before this year too.
That's true. That's true.
So I think it's going to be a great game. It's going to be a really good game to watch.
We're coming up against the break here. Don't forget, go vote on our poll. We're going to try to get a phone call, a couple of calls in the next segment. Be sure to refresh your browser. If you're on the tdshow.com, the live link should pop up there, or if you're on Spreaker, you know what to do there. We'll be back.
Be back.